Hey everyone, it's Final Fantasy Channel here. Hope everyone's doing well. So a lot of people have been asking about my list of my favorite Final Fantasy games. A lot of people already know like my top three and what my least favorite Final Fantasy is, but I've always wanted to like make a video of like each Final Fantasy that I have played and just put it in the list of my most favorite to least favorite. So that's what I'm gonna do here. Hope you all enjoy the video, and let's get started.
Darkness falls upon the realm, but here is born Leon the Metal, warrior's legend to adorn. With Twitch as his battleground, he fights his way through powerful spells and epic quest, his destiny he'll pursue. Sword a faithful companion by his side in peace, streaming with passion, engulfed in his dreams. He'll conquer every dungeon, face monsters bold and fierce with his loyal viewers. His journey he'll immerse. Leo, the ultimate Final Fantasy channel we admire, guiding us through worlds, setting our souls on fire. With every boss defeat, every magical artifact found, he conquers all challenges. His power knows no bounds.
So the Final Fantasy games that I've got it written down here. The Final Fantasy games that I've got listed are all the ones that I've played, like I said. So this includes Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not 11, because I've never played 11, so it wouldn't be fair to me to put it on a rating or anything. Final Fantasy 12, 13, 14. Even though we haven't finished 14, I'm going to put it on the list. It might not seem as fair because I haven't finished it. But I think I've got like we're pretty much like halfway through the game and story-wise, almost. So I think I got a pretty good idea of the game and how I feel about it so far. Of course, it's not really fair, without playing the whole game, but as of right now, halfway through the game, this is where I'm going to put it on my list. I'll let you guys know when we get there. This also includes Final Fantasy 15, 16, 7 Remake, Rebirth. We got Final Fantasy Tactics, World of Final Fantasy, Mystic Quest, Dirge of Cerberus, Crisis Core. Not Advent Children because it's a movie, that doesn't count. Strangers of Paradise, Dissidia 012, and Dissidia NT. The Theater Rhythm, I am putting this on the list. Crystal Chronicles and Typo, and also 4 Part 2, 10 Part 2, and the 13 Trilogy. 13 Part 2 and 13 Part 3. So, in total, that is 33 games, Final Fantasy games that I have played. So, this is gonna be my top 33 list. Like I said before, like after always knowing what my top 3 was and my least favorite Final Fantasy was, it was kind of a challenge to make the rest of the list. I gotta be honest, because usually I've always thought of all the other Final Fantasies as usually around the same rating, I never really thought about it until just recently. But after doing some careful thought about this, this list feels right to me. It just does. And I know a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people that are also huge Final Fantasy fans would disagree with me or have their own list, of course. I hope that I would hope that some would at least agree with me. But this list is just my opinion as of 2024. So, and as of how much we played so far. So let's get to number 33, which is my least favorite Final Fantasy. Now, just so y'all know, just because it's my least favorite Final Fantasy, I'm not saying that it's bad. I want to make that clear. Because I do love, or at least, I do love every Final Fantasy. I really do. It's just, of course, you know, I've got my own opinions of, like, which one's better, of course. I'm sure everybody does. But yeah, for this one, my number 33 would have to be Final Fantasy X Part 2. And like I said, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy X Part 2 is a great game. I really do like it. I love the combat in the game. I love the music. I do like how they went from a turn-based, you know, in Final Fantasy X to more of an action kind of game. I do like that. And then, in my opinion, I would say that this game is probably, I would have to say maybe a 6 out of 10. Before I've said 7 out of 10, but when I've really, when I was thinking about these games and everything, my rating would change from a 7 to a 6. So the reason why I give it a 6 out of 10 is because the story in Final Fantasy X Part 2 is not bad. It's not. It's just, it's not my most favorite thing in the world. Also, when we had missions in the game, the missions part were it wasn't really my most favorite thing either. I guess you could say the main thing for me of why I gave Final Fantasy X Part 2 a 6 out of 10 is because of it's just a little too girly for me. Some of the cutscenes in the story in this game it felt like the dialogue was just way too cheesy for me. It wasn't like. It felt like it should have been a rated E game instead of a rated T game. And to be honest, I didn't really care for that. I didn't. That was really the main thing for me. I can think of one thing actually that usually Final Fantasy in each at least mainline game when you face the final boss, they have like this like unique really fucking awesome music, you know what I mean? But X Part 2, they did have a different song, but the music actually sucked, in my opinion, for the final boss. I did not like it at all. It wasn't nearly as good as any other Final Fantasy. And that's actually one of the things that I really look forward to in a Final Fantasy game, is the final boss music. And the X Part 2 is just like, it was just so annoying, in my opinion. Okay, I don't want to spend too long talking about Final Fantasy games because we got 33 games here. So let's get to number 32. Number 32 for me would have to be a Final Fantasy game that came out on PSP, and is actually Dissidia. Dissidia Final Fantasy is... I like the idea of Dissidia, where you could get all the Final Fantasy characters and have them face each other. I really love that idea. And I really do like the story of not just Dissidia, but Dissidia 012 and NT. For me, what makes this a number 32 in my list is, I would have to say, the gameplay. Now, something that y'all should know about me. PSP games are not my most favorite games in the world. They're not. I don't know why. It's something about them, but with Final Fantasy, it seems like all PSP Final Fantasy games, I just never cared for the combat for any game, really. That was on the PSP. I don't know if it was the console or if it was the game itself. You know, it's just like I just didn't have as much fun with it as I probably would with just like playing on a regular console like PS5 or PS4 or whatever. And because of that, the game, not just Dissidia, but the other games that were on PSP, it never wanted me to come back to it. Really, I think also it was because a lot of the fighting styles in these PSP games, they used like the D-pad a lot, which is something I'm not used to. I mean, of course, that doesn't mean it's not fun, but the way that the combat was portrayed in using the D-pad in these games, it just like it never. Something about the D-pad, it just never made it fun for me, you know? I was like, especially when it came to these kind of games where they were like in between action and RPG, action and turn-based. With turn-based, I had a lot of fun with it because you know, you could think about the game and strategize, and you know, you can use the D-pad whenever you like. But when it's kind of more actiony, like these games are, it feels weird on the controller, you know, or the PSP. It's a little bit tough to keep up with the game, if that makes sense. But it also kind of feels janky, you know. With that in mind, let's go to number 31 on our list. 31 for me would have to be Dissidia 012. And everything that I've said with Dissidia applies to this game as well. But what made me put Dissidia 012 above Dissidia would have to be the world, actually. Because Dissidia is a kind of game where it doesn't have a world. It's more like a kind of like a puzzle kind of game, a little bit. Which Dissidia 012 is the same thing, but it also includes a world, which I actually kind of like. I do. All right, let's get into number 30 on our list. Number 30 for me would have to be Final Fantasy IV: The After Years, or you'd call it 4 Part 2. Sequels for the win, right? You know, when sequels came out, like 10 Part 2 and 4 Part 2, I've never really been a huge fan of them. I've always thought that they were worse than you know, the Part 1s of the game, and 4 Part 2 is no exception for me. The way that Final Fantasy IV, for anybody that doesn't know, the way that Final Fantasy IV Part 2 is structured, it's based on a series of tales. After you played Final Fantasy IV, you know, you get to know all your characters. And with Final Fantasy IV Part 2, it's like each character has a story of their own in the same game. And the way that's split is it was split into tales. So, you know, for example, you would have Kane's tale, or Cecil's tale, and then Rydia's tale, or, you know, just stuff like that. You know, I gotta admit, I don't mind the idea of the story. It's just the way that it played out. It wasn't really my most favorite thing in the world, you know? I don't know what it is exactly. I just didn't have as much fun with it as I did with 4. And you know, while we're on the subject here, I am talking about 4 Part 2, the 2D version. If we're talking about the 3D version, the 3D version would be the lowest on my, like, the last place on my game list. For anybody that is wondering if they should play the 2D version or the 3D version, I definitely recommend the 2D version. 2D version, at least in terms of combat, is so much better than the 3D version. I did not have fun with the 3D version at all. I did not. The 2D version is just so much better. And you know, for part 2, this is one of those games. This is one of those rare times, actually, where the music didn't really captivate me as much as it usually does. You know, in my opinion, it's not as good as like a lot of others. All right, let's go to 29 on our list. So 29 for me would actually have to be a side game called Final Fantasy Type O. Now, one of the things I love about Type O is the music. I think the music's great in Type O. I really do. The combat for me is like a... It's also another one of those games where it's kind of like an in-between action, turn-based kind of thing, you know? And also, this was a PSP game. I think when it first came out, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But they do have a PS4 version, which is nice, which I played it on. And I gotta be honest, I had a lot, like I was saying before, I had a lot more fun on the PS4 version than I did with the PSP. And this was also the very first Final Fantasy that was rated M. This was like the actual very first mature Final Fantasy. So the thing about Type O is that I think the story's great. I think the characters are great. But the thing that makes me put this and my number 29 on my list is I actually don't like the way that how can I say this? I don't like the way that the characters were acting, if that makes sense. Or, I'm sorry, it's like if you watch a movie and you like the characters, but the acting is not good. It's like the same with Final Fantasy Type O, in my opinion. A great example for me would be when the characters are just talking to each other. Like one of those... I don't know what they're called, boss people of you know, of the team of characters. When they were talking to each other, it was a lot of dialogue, which kind of made it drag on. But also it was just their mouth moving up and down. There wasn't really any facial expressions or just like any personality to it, if that makes sense. And it kind of feels like they didn't put a lot of effort into it. Usually I wouldn't say this into a Final Fantasy game, but it really does. Because Final Fantasy Type O came out in 2011? Maybe later? No, I think that's way too old. Maybe 2013? Something like that. It was in the 20-teens, for sure. You know, with all the mainline Final Fantasy games that came out beforehand, it seemed like those characters had a lot more personality to them. It really did. So it really feels like they didn't put any effort into the personality of these characters. That's why it's my number 29. So let's get to my number 28. My number 28 would have to be Final Fantasy IV. And I know I said that, like, well, I still stick by my statement that 4 is a lot better than 4 Part 2. And it's a good game. Don't get me wrong, it is a really good game. I mean, the story's great. The music, like I said before with 4 Part 2, is not my most favorite thing in the world. That's one of the reasons why I put it in my number 28. do like the combat. The combat is just like Final Fantasy 1 through 6. It's turn-based. So some of you may be wondering why I put this in my number 28. Some of these Final Fantasies is just... I think, well, first of all, I think Final Fantasy 4 is probably an 8 out of 10. I really do. And, you know, that says something, and that's my number 28. I think it's an 8 out of 10. I really like the game. But some Final Fantasies is just like... I can't explain it, but it just doesn't feel like, in my opinion, it just doesn't feel like it's any better than any of the other Final Fantasies that I'm going to mention soon here. That's above number 28. Some Final Fantasies are like that. I was really trying to think of like, why is this my number 28? You know, like, why is this worse than all the other ones that I'm going to mention soon? Like, and to be honest, I couldn't really come up with an answer. Some Final Fantasies for me are just like the same as any others. Like, I've had like as much fun with it as I did with other games, but also in my opinion, it is definitely better than Typo. I guess you could say the reason why I put it in my number 28 is just because it just felt right to me. You know, it just did. It's not something that I can explain, and a lot of these Final Fantasies might be the same way. To be honest, it just felt right, you know. But let's go to number 27 here. 27 for me would actually have to be Crystal Chronicles. I really like Crystal Chronicles. I also think it's an 8 out of 10. I had a lot of fun. Like, I really love the idea where you just like, even though it's in a lot of Final Fantasies, I really love the idea that you're just like just an adventurer, and you know, you're just traveling around the world and like meeting new people, doing some like different cutscenes and events while you're on the road, you know, visiting towns, you know, fighting enemies, and the fact that it's online, you can play with other people, I really like that. It makes the game a lot more fun, for sure. And you know, the game is pretty easy, actually. It's not bad at all. And it had a good pace to it, you know? It really did. So I actually do know the reason why I didn't put this higher on my list. Is because of the final boss. So the final boss here, don't get me wrong, I love the combat, I love the music, and I love the story of this game. Like, I really like everything. But what makes this a little bit lower on the list for me is because the difficulty level of the final boss. Throughout the Crystal Chronicles, like I said, the game is pretty easy. You could pretty much just go through it without having to do any grinding. But once you get to the final boss, it's like it went from really easy to extremely hard. You know, the final boss is not fucking easy at all. And I mean, of course, the final boss is supposed to be harder than the previous bosses you face. Like, I mean, it just makes sense. But the difficulty for this final boss was like way higher than I expected it to be. To be honest, I did not like that. It's like we're playing through the Kingdom Hearts series now, and it's with those games, certain bosses are just way tougher than others, and you know, to me it's always so fucking annoying. You know, I mean. I do not like that at all. I don't. The difficulty level should have a nice pace to it. If you're playing on easy, it should be easy the whole way. If you're playing on normal, it should be normal the whole way, and so on. You know. But with these older games, especially, the difficulty level it's like it fluctuates. You know. I mean, I don't mind the challenge, but that was ridiculous. My next game, my number 26 on the list, would have to be actually Theater Rhythm. It's the trailer. So this is all new to me. I don't know anything about this game. Dude, I absolutely loved Theater Rhythm. I mean, it's like I was. I love the music choices that you can do, and it's kind of like the record keeper of going on a pathway and unlocking different songs and everything. And of course, the option to listen to all those songs is I love it. I fucking love it. So what makes this number 26? Even though I had a lot of fun with it, and I love listening to those songs and everything, it's the problem with this kind of game is that it's just kind of like a one and done kind of situation. You know what I mean? It's like you play it, you have fun with it for a few hours, and you might want to go to the end and unlock stuff and everything, but after that, you just kind of feel done. You know, and like you don't want to ever play it again. At least not for years and years. Don't get me wrong, when you buy the game, it's worth it, because when you have a lot of fun and everything, but once you're done with it, it just kind of feels like, it's like, was it worth it? But yeah, that's just how it felt to me, it wasn't really something that, I want to go back to. Let's go to number 25. So 25 for me is actually Dissidia NT. Dissidia NT for me, like going through the story, and especially with all the characters from Final Fantasy 1 through 15, I had a lot of fun with it. And the combat in Dissidia NT is so much better than the originals, in my opinion. Well, for one, it's not a PSP game, but also it's just the way it's structured, if that makes sense. Don't get me wrong, I still think that they could improve on the combat. Nobody's really playing it anymore, at least not online. And I think that's probably the main reason. Because the combat could definitely still be improved upon. It still has that PSP element in there, a little bit. Dude, the fucking graphics are like fucking amazing in that game. Like holy shit. But Dissidia NT is also another one of those games where it's just like, after you play it, I don't really feel like I could go back to it, It just doesn't have that feeling. Alright, let's go to number 24. So, 24 for me would actually have to be Strangers of Paradise. Strangers of Paradise is kind of like, what was the one I said before? Oh, right, it's kind of like a Type O, in the ways that, like, I do like the characters, and I like the situation where they, where they're warriors of light and everything. The character portrayal or character development is not as good as it probably should be, And, the in-game graphics for Strangers of Paradise are kind of weird. It's a little bit strange. And, I love the fact that you can choose between all kinds of jobs. Dude, there's a shit ton of jobs in Strangers of Paradise. Like, there's a lot. I like the variety. I like the, that you can also play with online, even though online is not the greatest in the world. There is a lot of glitches with the game, and you know the story of Strangers in Paradise. I liked it throughout the game, but the ending is like super amazing. Like it is awesome. When you play Strangers in Paradise, you know you're playing through the whole story, and before you get to the ending, you're like, okay, this is all right. You know, this is not bad. I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's all right. And then when you get to the ending, you're like, oh my god, this is so fucking amazing! Like, holy shit. That's one of the things that made Strangers in Paradise so great. It really did. I'm not gonna spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it yet. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Right on our journey through the realms of fantasy, we are the master